I'm Greg Tepper. That's Greg Powers. And this is This Week
in Cruton.
Powers is here. We're here for our annual visit, This Week in Recruiting. Follow Greg Powers on Twitter at gpower79. And, of course, he works for Next Level Athlete, we're proud to partner with Next Level Athlete. I don't know if that is mutual. Especially, have you seen this show?
Certainly it is.
Have you seen this show? Greg Powers, Next Level Athlete, Next Level D1 on Twitter. Give him a follow there. A lot to get to here, Powers, in your weekly recruiting dump, which is on TexasFootball.com. We've got a couple of things, I think, on the site that we call dumps, which I guess I don't know.
Should we change it to the notebook? I don't know.
I don't know. I think I
like the dump.
I like the dump. I think it's good. Let's start with our prospect on the rise, and this is a guy that we've known about basically since his team started winning big. He kind of came on the scene as a sophomore, not for the school that he's playing for now. He was a star basketball player at West Texas. Transfers to Groover. We're talking about Jaylen Conyers, the do-it-all athlete for Groover. This kid is, in many ways, because he plays at the 2A level, he's such a walking mismatch. At 6'4", 220, he's a talented basketball player, but he's got some football skills as well.
Well, and I think that's what kept him maybe a little bit under the radar as far as football recruiting is concerned, is that his ability on the hardwood was so apparent. You know, he had his team poised this year to – I mean, they were in the midst of making a state championship run and had a really good season. You know, he's a guy that can sky high and slam it down and has some highlight-worthy plays on the hardwood, but now colleges in the football recruiting world are really taking notice of him. And I think a big question is really what position could fit him best, because I have no idea. I mean, I do this for a living. I've done this for 15 years. I watched Jaylen Conyers tape, and I feel like he could do a myriad of things. He's playing DB and wide receiver for Groover.
He could be, in many ways, kind of that almost that big slot. You know, he could be the right. Kind of tight end, kind of the stand-up tight end. Probably not an inline tight end, but he could also play defensive end. I mean, this is a guy who feels like he could play anywhere, and I think people are starting to notice that versatility. It was a big week of offers for Jaylen Conyers. The word is out on Mr. Conyers.
It's over. Everybody knows about him now. Texas A&M, Georgia, Oregon, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Michigan, Baylor, LSU, Arizona State, and Tulsa this week.
It was a good – he got a lot of mail is what you're saying. A lot of mail.
A lot of attention. I would say his Twitter blew up.
Yes, I would say so. This is a guy who, again, was a big reason why Groover was able to make it to their first state championship game, and a guy who I think is only going to continue to rise up prospect ranks. Once you get noticed like this, people are going to start to notice your film, and I imagine you're going to hear more about Groover athlete Jaylen Conyers. Cool to see a small school kid here. You know, we focus so much on 6A and 5A because they produce the majority of the prospects, mainly because there's more prospects there.
Exactly.
But I will also say that here's a 2A kid, and if you can play, this is proof that it doesn't matter what level of football you're playing. If you can play in Texas, you're going to get noticed.
They will find you. And I think this is a good caveat to throw out right here is the recruiting timeline. A lot of people feel like, you know, if I'm heading into right now and I'm going to be a senior next year and I don't have offers, I'm really behind. But the evaluation period hasn't even began yet for colleges for the 2020 cycle. Right. So don't hit the panic button yet, guys. I mean, if you're out there and you feel like school should be extending you an offer, even if you're a coach at a high school and you feel like some of your prospects are still flying under the radar, it's not time to panic yet, because all these colleges will be dumping into Texas beginning April 15th.
They certainly will. Let's get to our commit of the week. We're going down to Austin for this one, as Austin picks up a commitment, or rather University of Texas picks up a commitment from 2020 running back Jaden Humphrey out of Dallas Bishop Dunn. Another kind of prospect factory private school in the DFW Metroplex. He had a lot of offers. He decides to land with the Longhorns, a kid who ran for almost 1,200 yards and 11 touchdowns for Bishop Dunn last year, and a guy who certainly passes the eyeball test, I would say.
And it's a good start for their recruiting class as far as running back is concerned. I know there's been some talk about Hullaby possibly being an H-back, fullback, tight end type of player within their offense, but they missed out on a couple of key targets at the running back position down the recruiting homestretch last year, in Noah Kane, Trey Sanders, both from IMG Academy. And this is a good start for them because he adds depth. He's a versatile player. He's a great blocker. Rushed for over 1,000 yards and helped lead his team to a state championship game. And I think that his consistency within that offense was a big reason why the Falcons were able to go on that run.
Yeah, they go 11-3 on the year. The one thing I'll say, I think it's important to note, and this is not a knock on him, this does not strike me as the every down back. This is a guy who you are, as an H-back, a more physical guy, short yardage guy, a third down guy. If you're going to have a Thunder and Lightning combination, he would be the Thunder there.
And what's really cool about him is we talked about this over the last few weeks about running backs who can also be great pass catchers. He had 392 receiving yards last year, caught 5 touchdown passes. So pretty versatile guy. I mean, Lil Jordan Humphrey was a guy who played running back in high school who made the transition to a different position once he arrived at Texas. I'm not calling that for Hollaby. We rate him as a running back. But there has been some talk that he can do some different things within that offense.
We're talking with Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete here on Texas Football Today. Get involved in the conversation, the hashtag TF Today. All right, we're going to kind of drop back down to the small schools. Get down to 4A, I believe. Is it 4A?
Yep.
Yeah, 4A. Godly for our underclassman of the week. It's 2021 wide receiver Brennan Hawkins, another kid. Certainly, if you're into measurables, this guy certainly has it. Standing 6'3" at the wide receiver position is going to stand out. Caught 34 passes for 737 yards and 8 touchdowns. The leading receiver for this team, just as a sophomore, only getting better. And it seems like starting to pick up a little bit of momentum in the recruiting game.
Picked up Texas Tech, his first in-state Power 5 offers, first in-state offer regardless of classification. So that's a good one to start with because Texas Tech knows how to get the wide receivers the football. He's also been offered by Illinois State and Kansas so far. TCU's shown him some interest, has not pulled the trigger on an offer. And those really, he told me, that were the 4 main schools who have been recruiting him so far. So the word is just now starting to get out on Brennan Hawkins. And I think even kind of watching him go through the skills clinic this weekend, he's a guy who doesn't really know how good he can be yet. You know, he's just starting to scratch the surface of his potential as a player, and he's starting to figure out, if I really make a serious run at this, I can be an elite national recruit. And at 6'3", 185 pounds, looking the way he does with the frame that he has, it would be no surprise to see 1 year from now we're talking about Brennan Hawkins having 20 offers.
Well, and it's really interesting because he comes from a Godly program. You talk about kids who need to go to these camps to get noticed.
Right.
At Godly, this is a run-first offense. This is an offense that is essentially about 75-25 run. He caught 34 passes, which is literally half of all the passes that were caught by Godly last year. This is not an offense that lights it up through the air. And so you talk about these camps like the Sky's the Limit camp. This is an example of a kid who's going to benefit and get more notice there, as opposed to a wide receiver. If you're hauling in 80-90 catches a game, 89 catches a year, people are going to notice just based on your stats. This is a guy who probably needs to go and get in front of recruiters and say, hey, come pay attention to me. I can play a little bit of ball.
And Godley's not necessarily on the beaten path, so to speak, as far as recruiting visits are concerned. So it's good to have the opportunity to see him in person, to really put to verify the size, number one, the skills, and then put that in comparison to what he's doing on tape, which was pretty good. His tape is pretty good. Yeah. So Brennan Hawkins, I think, is a guy who's just now starting to take off, we'll say, in the recruiting trail, but a lot of people are going to know that name 1 year from now.
Finally, we're wrapping it up with our Recruit of the Week, a name that people in the DFW Metroplex know pretty well, I would say. Arlington 2020 athlete Johari Rodgers. We're saying athlete. This is a kid who's playing quarterback for Arlington, and playing might not be a strong enough word. He is dominating at the quarterback position. He was a big reason why Arlington had such a special year in 2018, heading into his senior year, and he's named his top 8. He's got 8. He's got a ton of offers. He's narrowed it down to 8 for Johari Rodgers.
And that top 8 was Arkansas, LSU, Georgia Tech, Florida, Miami, Oklahoma, TCU, and Texas. The last 2 on that list being in-state, TCU and Texas. There's probably a little bit of a debate on what position fits Johari Rodgers best on the next level. I personally like him as a defensive back. I think those guys are harder to find. He's an aggressive defensive back on the camp scene and playing it some on 7-on-7. We've got to see him there, and he's able to compete with the elite wide receivers. He does have, like all high school prospects, to have to shore up his game once he gets to the next level, because he is spending all of his time playing quarterback for the Colts.
Let me ask you a dumb question. Okay, this is a guy.
We'll see how dumb it is.
Yeah, this is a guy who and I hope there are people who also think this, so I'm not alone in being dumb. This is a guy who's been tremendous as a quarterback.
Yep.
What about him makes you think this is a guy as a defensive back at the next level as opposed to a quarterback at the next level?
Well, first off, his size at 6 foot, 175 pounds, it's tough to find those guys with that size and the ability to move in the defensive backfield. So I would say, to me, why I would project him as a defensive back is because I can find a wide receiver that's 6 foot 175, and I can find a quarterback probably who can throw the ball a little bit better than him, that's bigger and taller. But he's an elite player with the football in his hands as a runner. But I just think that I would say his relative upside is better for me personally. Right. I could be wrong. He could go to any of these schools and play quarterback or wide receiver, and I could have egg on my face. But me, as I projected, I would say DB.
That's interesting. So basically you're looking at the skill set and saying, where can we best deploy what you do well? Right. And you think that the defensive back position is where he best projects.
Well, and I also think a guy like Johari Rodgers has to think seriously about how can I push my game forward and make it to the NFL one day? I mean, I know that that's the dream of all of these great high school players who have all these offers. They want to play in the league. And I think that you have to really seriously consider that as you pick a school and decide what position fits you best on the next level. I mean, I'm not saying that each one of these schools has offered him necessarily as defensive back that's on his top 8. But he has to make that decision. If some of them have offered him at wide receiver and some of them had offered him at DB, some may have offered him as an athlete where we will rate him. We'll rate him as an athlete because we really don't know, right? That's the cop-out is the athlete position. But he has to make that decision, going forward and put himself in a position where he can advance his skill set.
Interesting. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch Johari Rodgers as a senior as well. It's Greg Powers, the next level athlete. We got big stuff coming on the site, too. I think, did we decide it's going to be sometime
next week? Probably.
Looking like next week.
Hopefully.
Got some big recruiting stuff coming down on the site.
We keep alluding to this.
I know.
Each and every week it keeps getting pushed back a little bit more and more.
Wow.
But the tools are going to be pretty fun for the users at Dave Campbell's Texas Football, and I think all the players and coaches that come around the site are really going to enjoy it.
I think it's going to be pretty fun. He's Greg Powers of Next Level Athlete. Follow him on Twitter at GPower79 and follow Next Level Athlete on Twitter at NextLevelD1. Powers, appreciate it. Let's do it again next week.
Let's do it.